we're discussing Tennessee recruiting, and Caleb was all about Tennessee's newest commitment. And the question he had, is it too early to start recruiting prospects? Because this is a 2026 prospect. So we're going to get into that and the state of Tennessee football recruiting. But Caleb, if you can, tell me about Tennessee's latest commitment, Mr. Whitehead, an athlete that is impressive enough to get an offer and a committable offer this early in the process. What do you think of Tennessee's pickup? And then we'll get to, is it too early to start recruiting prospects?
Well, speaking of Brett Favre, this is a Mississippi Gulf Coast kid.
Thank you.
And so his name is, Sharroid Whitehead. He is an athlete. He has played quarterback, running back, receiver, and return specialist as a freshman last year at Ocean Springs High School. And he had 34 total touchdowns as a true freshman. 5'9", roughly 175 pounds. I don't pay any attention to that. He was a freshman. You know he's obviously going to get bigger. The question is, how much bigger is he going to get height and weight-wise? He was already fielding offers, and this is what threw me off. And so it's some desperation ad. Florida State, Penn State, TCU, and Ole Miss had all already offered him. So it wasn't like Tennessee got him out of nowhere. And Tennessee offered him after those schools. Tennessee wasn't even in his top 6 in July. They come and offer him in August, and he commits in September, which is kind of telling as a 2026 prospect. That is a good sign for Josh Heupel, and the idea that maybe Josh Heupel does have some chops on the recruiting trail. But we don't know what he's going to grow into.
We don't, which leads us to 4 downs.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, let's talk some recruiting. 4 downs brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia. Daily updates. Just go on Facebook, Sports Treasures TN, SportsTreasuresTN.com. All right, so the one, the only Cooper Mays, who is a fantastic individual and up on YouTube right now, is going to set us up with the downs. Coop, what should people do?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Hey, by the way, we're close to a big number that we want to achieve here quickly. So as far as our YouTube subscribers, so do me a favor. If you like the show, just tell somebody today. Tell one person. And I would greatly appreciate that as we grow this thing. Again, support our sponsors that are down below. That's why we are here. So, Coop, what down?
Coop here. First down.
Is it too early, Caleb, to recruit this young man, Mr. Whitehead, because he is 2026? What say you?
I want to say no, but that's a broader philosophy for me because I just don't think college coaches should be allowed to recruit people this early. But honestly, I don't think it's too early at this point. If all these other schools are offering him, then they obviously see something in him. So I can't really knock Josh Heupel for doing it.
You know why I would say no? And this would have been a different answer 20 years ago or 10 years ago, possibly. But nowadays with the transfer portal and how things play in the player's favor, more times than not, they could just pull his commitment if something happened, if he didn't grow into the player that they thought. And really, even back in the day, you didn't have to pull a commitment. I'll give you a little bit of insight. Here's the way: if a guy, let's say, had a terrible summer before his senior year and you had already accepted an offer from him, here's what you do. You just stop calling him and he'll get the hint. Nowadays, though, you can just call and say, I don't think it's a good fit for you. And the high school coach isn't going to burn you forever as he would have in the past. That used to be a big deal. You couldn't go back and recruit in a school that you basically told a guy he couldn't come. So nowadays, that was committed. So nowadays, it's not a big deal. It wouldn't bother me whatsoever if Tennessee had 5 commitments for the 2027 class. Because at the end of the day, a commitment's not what it once was on the school's end, Caleb.
Yeah, and they probably have resources now where they can estimate based on players like just their body type, what they will grow into. I mean, look, this was I don't know if you were, Dave, but I was following Arch Manning when he was in middle school, and he was already being branded as the best all-around Manning to ever come out of high school. And I mean, for those who don't know, Arch Manning is the best Manning prospect ever coming out of high school. It's not, I mean, Peyton and Eli weren't even close to that level coming out, and they knew that about him when he was in 8th grade.
Wow. So Peyton was pretty good now.
Peyton was highly touted, yes. But Arch Manning is literally seen as a combination of Eli's arm and Cooper's mobility, or Archie's mobility, which is no Manning's ever had that.
So,
and by the way, I said with Peyton had the second best arm and not great mobility, just had incredible intelligence, which you can't measure intelligence in recruits coming out of high school. That's not something anybody ever measures in recruits in football IQ.
Oh, our friend SC Scout guy saying, Dave, you'll be happy to know that Jay Phillips from 107.5 in Columbia has been telling people every day this week to go and check out your show on the air. Well, that's pretty awesome, Jay. And you know what that got you? That got you some extra work because we'll ask you to be on the show later this week. So Jay is a fantastic guy. You met him at SEC Media Days, right?
I believe I did, yes.
It's kind of a blur the first time. What down is it, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Okay, as far as commitments, who should Tennessee be the most worried about? I can't come up with even a close second to Boo Carter. I mean, he went to Colorado. He's changed high schools. I mean, that to me is the one that if it didn't stick, I would have zero surprise.
Yeah, it's probably Boo Carter, but if you get caught up in the Colorado hype and you see how far away they actually are after that Oregon game, which he probably did, maybe that changes things a little bit because Oregon wasn't just out, and they're not the only team, by the way, in college football that's out to do this. They didn't just beat Colorado; they humiliated Colorado. And I'm a believer in Deion Sanders and what he's doing, but I think the hype will continue to fall off because the truth of the matter is, guys, he didn't play anybody good his first 3 weeks. I don't care what you say about TCU. My brother texted me about this recently. They had 20 years of luck rolled into one season to get to that national title game, and they don't even have the same team anymore. And they lost their offensive coordinator. This is not a good TCU football team. So Colorado hasn't beaten anybody worth their salt yet.
Pretty good point. Tennessee's most likely commitment is what down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right, most likely commitment. I'm going to throw a couple at you and see what you think because they're both visiting this week. I'm going to start with Daniel Hill, who is an athlete. What I'm hearing is that he could be Tennessee's next commitment. Now, you have South Carolina that's in the mix, so he's scheduled to take his official visit at a very interesting time. Who is recruiting him from South Carolina? Do you want to guess? Former Tennessee running back, Caleb?
Jay Graham?
Montario Hardesty.
You're right. Montario Hardesty is at South Carolina. That's right.
Yeah. And so Alabama with a guy named Robert Gillespie, you might remember his name as well, is in the mix. So those are the three schools that I'm told are primarily in the hunt, but I think they've got a great chance for him. That is Daniel Hill. He is out of Meridian, Mississippi. It's interesting to me that somewhat Auburn and Arkansas have been in the mix, but Ole Miss really isn't. So this looks like a kid who's ready to leave, and you would want to pull him, I would think, primarily away from Alabama. But I always looked at that early in a guy's recruiting process. Is he looking at schools that he really wants to leave, or does he end up just staying at the in-state school? So I would look at this and say he's looking to stay at the in-state school. All right, so another one, Cameron Michael, an athlete out of Statesboro, Georgia. Here is his list, and it's interesting. Little Dion, Colorado, Georgia, Kentucky, South Carolina, Tennessee. These are the guys, in my opinion, that Colorado is going to miss out on and ultimately may undermine Deion Sanders because look at his other four schools. They're all in the Southeast. He is from Statesboro, Georgia. He's 6'1", 181 pounds. This would be a monster get. Kelsey Pope recruiting him for Tennessee, scheduled to take his official this weekend. He is a 4-star player. Be a huge get, Caleb.
Oh, it'd be a gigantic get. And this is where the big test is. How is Deion going to win these battles for these type of guys? Because one of the things I love about Deion Sanders in Colorado, and people can hate it all day, I love that if you ever watch his interviews, he's refreshingly honest. In an era where coaches are so cagey and lie all the time, Deion Sanders does not lie at all. in his press conferences. And he straight up said before the Oregon game, he said, look, I am a bunch of linemen away from competing at the highest level. And he's right. He is. And where are you going to get those guys? Going to get them in the South. And the thing is, the one thing I will say is a guy like Cameron Michael is somebody who Dion probably could have more success with than guys in the trenches. But I still think somebody like Colorado is going to have to show more. I think location is still a factor for recruits. You guys may disagree with me on this. Maybe I'm crazy, but I think a lot of kids like to stay close to home when they're playing college football.
I think a lot of people want to play in the SEC too. I mean, if Colorado was suddenly a part of the SEC, then we'd be having a different conversation now. Daniel Hill is all in for SC, that according to SC Scout Guy. And then bring Hardesty home. Anything happened to Jerry Mack? Do you think Hardesty would get a phone call? Do you think if Jerry Mack got a job elsewhere because you and I have said it before, you don't have to be a great, and I'm not knocking Monterio as a coach, but you talk about a guy who gave his all for Tennessee, had 2 bad knees. He's the first guy I've ever covered that I said, how's your knee? And he goes, which one? So he gave his all for Tennessee. He has South Carolina ties. He's proven he could coach.
He's got a work ethic.
Yeah. I mean, well, I tell you, I'm not big into the former players just for the sake of it, but I can tell you from an integrity standpoint, Monterio Hardesty's the top. So I'm not trying to get anybody out of a job, but if Tennessee had an opening, especially at running backs, where you're primarily a recruiter, I'd call Monterio Hardesty probably before I'd call T. Martin.
Yeah, there was Dave, you were more tight end, so you probably didn't realize it because I knew a lot of fans there was a lot of anger that Hardesty did not play as much as he did until 2009. And a lot of people see that as an indictment on Fulmer. You're right. It was Hardesty was wrecked like consistently through injuries. But look, put it this way. People liked Monterio Hardesty a lot more than they liked Darian Foster in Tennessee.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and tell you, Monterio Hardesty, because he gave his all for Tennessee, cost himself perhaps millions, if not at least $1 million, because he continued to play on knees that were absolutely wrecked. And I guarantee you that was an issue in the combine, because the most important thing in the combine is the testing and what they do with the physical examinations. And I can guarantee you his knees weren't good. What down, Coop?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
Can Tennessee stay in the top 10? Right now, they're number 9. Yes, they can. And they absolutely have to. They have to be a top 10 recruiting team year in and year out, and really need to be a little bit better than that. But I think Tennessee, unless something were to bottom out on the field, will be a top 10 recruiting team under Josh Heupel. I think he realizes the importance of that. We have seen with the transfer portal that it's hit and miss. So, yes, I think they'll be, when we're having this conversation in December and January and February, that Tennessee will be a top 10 team in recruiting. I have little doubt about that, as a matter of fact.
I don't have much doubt about it either. I think the Florida game may have hurt a little bit, but I don't think it's going to hurt much because Tennessee and Florida aren't recruiting similar prospects. And I'm going to talk about this maybe tomorrow or Friday, but the only way they don't stay in the top 10 is if they lose this game on Saturday. This is the biggest game of the year for recruiting purposes. There's not a close second. There's not a close second.
If you lose this game, you'd be looking at potentially 4 losses, with Alabama and Georgia having, I believe, better rosters at this time. But that is,
and by the way, with Clemson declining, the time is right for the picking for South Carolina players.
Oh, absolutely.
Tennessee needs to cash in.
I agree 100%. Now, for the record, if you project forward to when Oklahoma and Texas enter the SEC, they're behind Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Texas A&M, Oklahoma. So you're looking at 6th in the SEC. I think if you're really going to compete for championships and be the better team that steps on the field, not the team that outcoaches, which I think they were last year to a large extent, but the better roster, 1 to 85, I think that you had better be in the top 3 in recruiting within the conference year in and year out.
They're going to jump 2 of those teams before the year's end. Book it. They're going to jump Texas A&M. Guys, Texas A&M just lost their quarterback for the year. They are having the Jimbo Fisher train is about to derail completely.
You
because
keep
of that.
saying that.
I'm still sticking with it. It's going to derail, and they'll suffer a wave of decommitments. Oklahoma, on the other hand, Brent Venables is nothing but fool's gold right now, Dave. I'm just going to say that right up front.
I do
Brent
believe
Venables
that.
is
I'm 100% with you on that.
Brent Venables is, I say this all the time. When a defensive coordinator takes forever to get his first head coaching job, even an offer, there's a reason. You brought this up. There was a reason John Chavis never got a real head coaching offer at Tennessee. Brent Venables is the John Chavis of Clemson. That's what he was.
I don't really know exactly how to address that, as John Chavis is not a big fan of mine. So let's just move on. The one person you probably won't hear on the Celebrate 98 series, well, if you do, it'll be Caleb Calhoun with Fred White and John Chavis. I don't think you'll see Dave, Fred, and John anytime.
I'm not knocking Chavis, the defensive
I'm not
coordinator.
saying you are. I'm just saying I've gone down that road and I'm good.
There were red flags all over with Brent Venables being hired at Oklahoma. And Oklahoma's 4-0 right now. They haven't played a soul. When they do, they're still going 8-4 this year. Something like that.